Welcome once again to Natural 2. I am James. He is Nathan. This is our unscripted tabletop and D&D talk show. So far, it's really just been D&D, but we like to keep our options open. You
We
know,
occasionally hit broader tabletop role playing game advice occasionally.
there's plenty of stuff that would apply to any game that you were playing at a table,
hmm
except like Candyland. So, there's the nuggets of wisdom are in there. This week, I was interested to talk about video games. What I mean by that is everyone talks about how it's terrible when players come to the table and play D&D like a video game. They want to play it like it's Skyrim and it's not. Or people had a problem with 4E because it was too much like World of Warcraft. We've all heard that before. And I'm not even disputing that. At least that's not my purpose in this conversation. I just want to take a slight three-quarters turn to the left and say that there are concepts in video games that are worth your time to consider lifting and adapting to your tabletop game as the DM. So, I've the first thing that came to my mind as I was thinking about this was, of course, the BioWare RPGs, specifically Dragon Age Inquisition, Mass Effect 3. I think there was some of this going on in Mass Effect 2 as well. Both of those games sort of have this concept of passive quests where you go back to your headquarters and there's a map or there's a list of tasks and you don't actually do anything but commit some of your resources to solving that problem, and then you leave and go do something else. In Inquisition, it took the form of this actually super cool map. I wish they had spent more time developing this part of the game, but you go to the war room and there's this super cool map,
hmm
and all of your hot advisors are standing around the table waiting for the law of your word, and you choose who is going to go solve this problem. Is it going to be a diplomatic approach? Is it going to be daggers in the dark? Is it going to be like greasing palms with money? What's it going to be? How am I going to solve that problem? Who am I going to send? I'm not even going to solve it. Who am I going to send to solve that problem? And I eat that kind of stuff up. I love that stuff. I would play a whole game that was kind of just that, frankly, but that's neither here nor there. When it comes to D&D, I think this could be a good way to show your players what else is going on in the world without them having to run out there on a grocery run, to all corners of the continent. Gives them a sense of being a part of something bigger, um, and that the world is proceeding and things are happening other than just the places they are looking directly at. And you had already done some of this in Asmiliath Adventures. We got a spy master that also had spells of messaging,
hmm
and so particularly toward the end, we really had this idea of, once in a while we would get word back of something that happened, and we would say, okay, well, send some spies here to find this out, send some people there to do that, and then we would focus our attention back on our mission, back on our cause. Um, and I think that our next campaign, I don't know how much we've already talked about or we want to talk about. The short version is the next campaign is, this kind of thing could slot right into it as well.
hmm
Um, Really, it's just an easy thing to add to your game. Low resource requirements from the DM, in my opinion, because most of the time you're going to present them with a problem, ask them for their answer, and then you're done until like the next session or longer. Because It's not their quest. It's a quest for their allies, their friends, their hirelings, and they'll find out how it went later.
Yeah, I mean, when you first brought this up, and I think once you like crack the door open on this topic, there's like a million different ways we can take it, which is kind of cool. But the dated reference that I have that I doubt anyone else will think of is at the end of Final Fantasy Tactics, which was a game I adored as a kid. You could start sending your, I guess, your team or your minions or your party members like out to go do passive stuff, and they would return with better skills and that kind of thing. So that's always been a something that I really enjoy because there is that kind of disconnect whenever you're playing a game and you return to your base and there's like 7 people that are supposed to be at like your level or your allies or whatever just standing there doing nothing. And they'll be like, you know that the war is coming and the evil Dark Lord's armies are preparing. We should be doing this and that. It's like, well, why aren't you doing this and that, right? But yeah, the cool thing that you can bring from that into D&D, and I think this even applies to I imagine everyone's first, I guess, what's the word, problem with it that they would present of like, oh, you know, my game's kind of focused on the small party and they're not really interested in like having minions and NPCs. You can still use this same concept, but just not put it in the player's like personal control. Because like what we did, or what you mentioned in his millionth a little bit, is you guys were in control of the spies, but realistically, it kind of just turned into like your spy master coming up to you and being like, "Here's where you put the spies, and here's the most recent news." So there really wasn't a lot of like, you know, micromanaging or like really like tiny interactions of like moving the pieces around the map and that kind of thing. You guys were like, we need to know more about this place, and that place. And then occasionally I would ping you with little bits of information so that you would have information on them. But the other side of this, which I think is really cool, is besides sending minions out and having them do a task, which is a whole, you know, rabbit hole in itself, this same mentality kind of applies to a stronghold, a city, a faction, whatever like organization that your party might be working for, is instead of going home, going back to your mission and looking at the little quest log and figuring out who slots where, you can do kind of the same process with their home base, right? Because there's so many parties that need I don't know, to dump their wealth or their resources or something of that sort. And that's something that you see very prevalently in video games today is, oh, you got to upgrade this facility at your base to get this bonus. Or if you build this thing or, you know, reconstruct the barracks that, you know, caved in last winter, you know, you get more beds for X, Y, or Z. And I don't know, that's a whole chunk of world building and presentation that I think helps immerse the party in like the overall world more versus like what their singular quest is, which I certainly enjoy, but perhaps not everybody might. But I think it's worth, I guess, considering or injecting ever so slightly.
I'm glad that you talked about the upgrading facilities and things like that because I was going to bring that up myself at some point in this conversation too. Because something else you can borrow from video games and adapt is the idea of many different kinds of advancement, many different forms of progression. Yeah. One of the things I see all the time and that we've talked about in our own group is, oh, XP, it's so like it's too fast. It's not fast enough. I don't know how much XP this monster is worth, and is it worth the same if you're at this level or at that level, or does it change, or is it just the amount? On and on and on and on. So layer some other forms of advancement onto the game. The characters having ranks within a society or a military or a militia or a guild, and those ranks can increase independently and totally disconnected from their level and their experience points, or unlocking abilities at their headquarters, you know, unlocking the alchemist tower, and the NPC alchemist that they saved 2 quests ago is moving in and now he's making 3 potions for them every week or something. and that doesn't have to have anything to do with XP or gold for that matter. And they watch their home base change. They watch their home base improve. That feels like an increase in a kind of level, um, without upsetting the apple cart for the DM. It's not something that they were expecting. I think this also makes life easier for the DM. When it comes to leveling up, the players know exactly what's coming,
Mhm.
and they know what's coming at every step of the way. And they know, I want this. I want this thing at level 12. I want it. Uh, and so I'm not going to be happy until I'm level 12. I don't care how fast the levels come. I just want to be level 12. These other things, they may not, they have no reason to know to expect them. So in the middle of your session, surprise, here's this goodie.
Mhm.
Here's this wonderful cake for you to eat that you had no idea was coming. And it's only good. There's no strife, there's no sour grapes, there's no impatience necessarily.
Mhm.
At least not in the beginning. If you do it long enough, they'll start to expect it. Good old Pavlovian response. But
No, I
uh,
find the leveling or the focus on leveling incredibly bland in D&D. Like so often I find players just like, "Oh, my build is only complete at level 8 and we're currently level 5. So the only thing I want is to level up until I hit level 8." And they finally get there and they're like, "Ah, well, this sucks. I want to be level 11." And so, like, you just kind of keep running into that wall. And so I've been trying in various ways to kind of steer the party away from being so fixated on their build and their level and what item they have, because I don't really see that actually making them enjoy the game more when they get there. They claim again and again and again that, like, this is so great and this is so exciting, and they type in the Discord that they can do this much damage, and it never actually does anything or means anything. So these other rewards, which again don't have to necessarily be built into like mechanics or provide an actual resource, it could just be a like story or connection or immersion reward. Again, like it could be a rank in a society, which doesn't inherently bring any sort of I guess like material reward or I guess like tool to use, but it allows them to, I don't know, feel better about themselves or move through different parts of the world that they couldn't previously, and like that in itself could be a reward. So I think that it's worthwhile in any sort of campaign if you're doing your kind of traditional four-party go on a grand quest and become heroic gods kind of, I guess, like story that is the stereotype of most D&D games. I think there's still a lot of benefit to be had of like finding different rewarding aspects of D&D to give them, whether that's like building something into their character or their organization, the world itself, the NPCs they have traveling with them, whatever works for your given situation.
you're gonna think I'm joking. You and you. You're both gonna think I'm joking.
Okay.
But if you laid the groundwork and followed through, I know that it would work. Find a chest in a dungeon. When they go to open it, you tell them to roll percentile dice, and it's full on gotcha loot box bullshit. Whatever comes up on that percentile dice, they open the chest, and it's the same weapon that they've already got, same stats and everything, except it's gold. And then everywhere they go, the NPCs comment on it. Oh, that's the woman with the golden sword. I can that thing hold an edge? Why, yes, it can. Let me show you. It would work. It sounds silly, but it would work.
Mhm.
And it's just a loot box, a
Whenever you
literal loot
say
box with a
loot
weapon
box,
skin in it.
the first thing I can think of is they like open this old rickety chest, and then like the traditional three slot machine thing starts spinning on the inside. They're
Yeah.
waiting to see where it lands.
Oh yeah. Or how about a friendly mimic that they feed objects to that they don't want,
Mhm.
and have a chance of like discovering a recipe, having
Oh,
something cool
Jesus.
spit out by the mimic. That
I
it's
know
video
one
gamey
of
as
our
hell.
players that would very much revolve around that mechanic at
Yeah.
that point.
And you don't even have to know what the formulas are. That doesn't have to be real. Just don't show them this video, and like you can decide that on the spot. Or if there's an
Hmm.
item that you want them to have or that they've really been wanting, and then just there you go.
Hmm.
You figured out that you know a burlap sack and a bedroll and a small animal just happens to create a bag of holding.
Hmm.
Congratulations! Like,
I do want to tag on to the end of this conversation that we certainly are not the pioneers of this conversation. We've had tons of different books and add-ons and like PDFs that you can buy that all center around like how to build a stronghold or a home base or how to put extra points or resources into your faction of some sort. I think is it Kingdoms and Generals is the one done by MCM. Am I remember that right?
so,
Kingdoms
oh
and
man,
Strongholds.
you butchered all of it. You didn't get any part of that right.
It's something.
it's
I own it. It's like right there.
it's Matt Colville and his company MCDM.
Close enough.
Strongholds and Followers was the first book. Kingdoms and Warfare is the second book. It just showed up for me. I backed it on Kickstarter.
Hmm.
And I think you have to say these things on YouTube now. They know nothing about us. They do
Hmm.
not know that we exist. There is no quid pro quo here at all. I
Hmm.
just like the books. And a lot of these
Well,
concepts.
obviously, if we were doing an ad sale, I'd get it right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, exactly. So these kinds of concepts are absolutely in those products. In fact, they go to tremendous detail, and I wouldn't even recommend that you start there.
Well, I would
Um,
take inspiration from it. Like what I would do and what I kind of have done is read through it, kind of get their, I guess, solution to certain problems and be like, yeah, I kind of like this and I hate this. I'll implement this in my own way and I'll scrap that entirely.
so that there's all of these ideas. They're not new, but very much like our conversation about stealing narrative arcs and plot points. It's the same kind of thing. We're giving you examples of how it could work and giving you the permission structure to try it.
Hmm.
Um, and it's also the sort of thing that can take as much or as little energy as you want. There again, like the books that we were just talking about are whole ass books. They are the size of the official D&D source books that will come out every 6 months, or in some cases bigger than those books.
Hmm.
They're full rules supplements. And if you have a party that's down for that and you have the energy and the mental bandwidth for that, knock yourself out. But it doesn't have to be that way. That in depth. You can just tack something on to fill this little hole that exists in your game, or to satisfy that player who's just always complaining about not leveling up. You can give them this to play with.
Hmm.
Hopefully make them kind of forget about the level ups for the
The level
levels up
ups?
or level ups,
Level ups. The increases in level.
levels ups. Uh,
But speaking to like how light it could be, the example that I'll give very briefly that I love from Is Millionth Adventures is at one point one of our players had dictated to a minion to go murder his ex-wife and then hide her body. Albeit he was drunk at the time, that isn't particularly meaningful.
character.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, the character was drunk at the
Maybe
time.
the player was, I'm not sure, but the character was.
Yeah. But so as a DM, all I really did is I sat down and I went, okay, what are the hurdles this NPC is going to overcome? I guess killing her, but probably don't need a skill check for that. Getting her body out of town without being noticed, stealth check. Hiding it somewhere without it being discovered, pretty easy. And then a survival check to get back. Did great, flying colors and everything, except a natural one on trying to return back to the town, so he ended up freezing to death up in the mountains. So it could be really as simple as that is how well did they do on these various tasks, and then you kind of write that narrative very loosely. And then again, you don't need to present a novel back to your player when you do return to them. It could be as simple as the last message from your NPC being like, hey, help me, I'm freezing to death. And that was the end of that as far as that story was concerned. But no, doesn't take a lot.
No. Uh, the last thing that was on my mind to include, who knows where the conversation can end up, but the last thing that I really thought of as I was sitting down is skipping to the fun part. And this is a concept that isn't unique to video games, but it comes up a lot in video games. It's the first place that I can think of an example. What I mean by this is we've been playing State of Decay 2 lately. Shout out. Uh, and when you claim a place for your characters to live, there you go there, you clear it out, and you claim the location as your headquarters. The screen goes black, and then it comes back up, and everybody's there and moved in and ready to go. Is there a way to make a fun escort mission where you are defending the convoy as they move your junk from your old base to your new base? I'm sure that there is. But oh man, is it way easier to just fade to black, and when the screen comes back, all your stuff is there.
Yeah. Well, I think that
And
comes down a lot to what kind of group you have and having a good understanding of like what they want to highlight and what they don't want to highlight. Like some groups hate traveling, so fast travel is a very easy option. Some love traveling, so then maybe like I don't know, traveling is something you want to spend time on versus skipping. So it's all a matter of what your party actually enjoys, what the fun part is.
and travel in D&D is the go-to example. But there are definitely, like, there's no limit to how you can use this. If
Shopping.
is shopping, or just like the example from the game, claiming a new home base or a headquarters. Like the fighter pulls her sword out of the last goblin's torso and he falls down dead. And okay, are you guys moving in? We're moving in. All right. 2 weeks later, the place has been mopped up. The goblin bodies have been burned outside in a heap, and all your stuff's here. Now what? You know, it there again, it's sort of about, part of this for me is about giving yourself permission to do it. Because I get bogged down in thinking like, well, we have to play that, we have to play out this time. We have to play out these days and these weeks. You know, other stuff is happening. That stuff can still happen. You can just hit, it's okay to hit fast forward.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as long as the group understands what's happening. And there's nothing stopping them from saying, oh, wait, I wanted to go do XYZ. Oh, okay, well, we can take care of that. We'll fast forward to that point in the timeline, and then we'll move on.
No. I can't emphasize how much I love time skips and how much I would like try and advise people to use time skips more in their game. And my initial pitch is it is so incredibly jarring for a narrative for every single second of every single day to matter enough to be on page or on screen. Like, we are playing adventurers in a fantasy world, so there is a lot of stuff that you're going to run into that is eventful. But no one's life, even heroic adventurers, is exciting all the time. And it just does not have to be highlighted as a D&D game all the time. And so whether it's like clearing out a dungeon and then you summarize the hour or two it takes to clear it out and get back to the surface, still a time skip. You can let your players describe what they're doing, how they're doing it. It still very much fits in the standard like ABC of D&D's flow. Or they can clear out a dungeon and you could skip a month. You could say, hey, we move in, we clear this out, we build an extra room, we establish a barricade at the front, we make it our home, we start a garden. And as long as that's what your players are okay with, then you can just pick back up when the exciting stuff begins again, when the next arc or adventure or hook is presented to them, versus this like kind of gray zone of just milking about and like, oh, I need to roll a strength check to see if I can move all these bodies, and like getting all bogged down in just this useless sludge that like no one's really getting a ton of enjoyment out of.
I've also seen in Critical Role and in the discussion about those stories, there have been threads, there have been plot threads left hanging, there have been stories with NPCs left unresolved, and the campaign is about to end. And the conversation in the community is like, well, they're not going to do anything with that because it was that, that was 5 levels ago. It would be pointless for them to do that. Or they have the, 6 hour long final session where they go back and check in on all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that even if your party is over leveled for that cave of goblins, they can still clear it. You just don't have to play the whole thing through. You can do that like the new Pokemon Scarlet, where, no joke, there's this new ability. It's such BS where you just send your little badass out to tear these Pokemon up that are just in the grass around you. You just stand there and watch.
Tear these
The battle
Pokemon
the
up.
battle screen doesn't load, the menu doesn't pop up. You just stand there. He runs over there, knocks the shit out of that guy, then looks around like who's next, goes to the next one, knocks him over.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do a thing. So if that goblin cave is too low level, then and there's no way that they're going to risk, injury down there, they can still clear it. Just say, okay, how do you want to do this? And by this, I mean the entire dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that in a half hour. The characters still got it done. They still made the land safe for the farmers in that area. And you didn't have to get bogged down in the turn by turn of your players kicking these goblins into the horizon. Like Team Rocket.
I think the best part about like lifting this kind of, I guess, mechanic or routine out of like a video game and placing it into D&D is you're not reliant on the fucking horrible AI to do things for you, because it's the DM basically dictating what happens. Because like that is 80% of the reason of why I usually don't use these systems in video games. It's like, hey, my treasured and very important character that I've been building up for hours, can you just go pick that up? And then they just run off a cliff. It's like, ah.
Well, I'm reloading the save. Oh, my last save was 90 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bed.
No, like that. I think that ultimately is kind of like the culmination of this piece of advice is D&D is so customizable. It is built to be your personal best enjoyment scenario. And that's, I guess, what appeals to me both as a DM and a player, is if I come to a game and it's like, man, my player or my character really wants to get this achieved, or, go about this in a certain way, you can work with the DM on that. And you could maybe during your downtime, put effort into this, or at the end of a campaign, have it be part of your epilogue, or just kind of do it through like text chat back and forth, like between sessions, whatever works. But as a DM, it's also really cool to get all the requests from the various players on what they're interested in, what their character wants, and where they want the story to go, and then feeding that to them in the best way possible, and seeing their clear and obvious enjoyment and excitement about getting something done or establishing something or having their character achieve something. And that is like the absolute core of my enjoyment. It's just like, you want this, let's craft it for you and hand it to you, because that is just so neat that we've all agreed to go about this system that allows us to do that.
As a parting thought, most of the things that we've talked about this time slot right in. We did a conversation some time ago about how to play D&D when you're not playing D&D.
Mm-hmm. That was
and our focus in that
one,
conversation. It was pretty close to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to watch it, thank you, first of all. Like and subscribe while you're there. Like and subscribe here, and then go to that one and
There you go.
again. But secondly, it'll be a little different, I'm sure. That was early enough. I think we were still finding our rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
and we're still finding our rhythm, but we're closer than we were. But our focus in that conversation was on narrative and role play. These are gamey things, mechanics that you can bring to the in between time between sessions too. If
Hmm.
you've only got half the party that really cares, then you can just do it with them in text messages. There again, it can be as big or as small of a deal as you need. It
And
just takes the imagination and the willingness to try and to steal.
pro tip, if it is something that half the party wants, and you as a DM don't want to add another spinning plate to your collection of spinning plates, you can let them do the majority of the legwork, and then you just kind of dictate the results. Like, if you want them to keep track of all the numbers and do all the rolling and do all the preparation for it, and you just look it over and give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, if it works, and then you're not increasing your workload. So,
While we're talking about stealing from games, what you just said, just it really takes me back. This is totally this is an anecdote. Um, I've already said to like and subscribe, so you can consider this like the post credits
don't say
sequence.
that, they'll click off.
No, are you? No, it's like reverse psychology, right? They have
Hmm.
never been more interested than they are right now.
There you go.
Um, when when I was a young man, Bubba Diddy 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 Dum. It's a song. Look it up.
I got it.
Uh, my first forays into role playing games were online, like rules light or no rules games. I They were play by post on forums. The first one that I really got into was called Alleria, I think. It was Alleria, something like that. Um, and the way that it worked was you wrote out this. It was like you're constantly writing your character's backstory, except it's the whole game. You wrote this 4 or 5 paragraphs just as well as you could about what your character was doing, and then it was up to a GM, because these games all had teams of GMs, to just say, yeah, you did it, or no, you didn't. uh they were sometimes maybe they were rolling dice for themselves to decide, but mostly I think it was just fiat. Just, you know what, I like the way you wrote that, so you succeeded. Or
Yep, the
and then
bar
they
was,
would
did you
write,
sell it to me good enough or nah?
yeah, yeah. So, and then they would write back however much, of the response, and that was the whole game. And so I'm reminded of that in what you just said. Like, uh, you tell me what you did. Tell me what your character was doing. Write me a story. 2,000 words or less, and then
That's
I'll send you a thumbs up emoji or a thumbs down emoji.
that's my little rambling tip is if you can sell something to me as a DM, at least me personally, you can get away with so much shit. Like, oh man, if you just like convince me and really convince me, I'll let you go to the moon and back. Like,
That's,
yeah,
yeah,
go for it.
dirty little secret. Like, if you're a player, uh, if you can just pitch your idea really well, DMs eat it up. They, don't always want to admit it, but
Or
that
at
a
least
little bit of
showcase your
your,
enthusiasm.
yeah, a little bit of your in real life, your IRL persuasion check. Um, it is a thing, and just try it. Give it a try.
Worst thing you can get is a no. Isn't that what they tell you
Yeah.
in like the dating advice podcast?
Right. Yeah. Among other things.
Next video, D&D is like dating.
Yeah. Or like James Bond.
Yeah.
99 no's and a yes means yes. Uh, no, that's not. Don't quote me on that. It's a joke,
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
You should stop after the first no. That's that's how things work.
Mhm. Words of
Uh,
wisdom here, natural too.
yeah. That's all I've got for this.
Yeah,
What, you
I
have
think
anything
we've
else?
no we rambled into the death zone at this point, so I think it's good.
Well, I told you it was the post credits. I'm telling you, like, When I go back to watch this, I want to see the ending, doodle doodle doo, and then the rest of this stuff.
There's like a
Uh,
scrolling bar at the bottom.
yeah,
Yeah, but
Natural 2 was brought to you by.
my closing sentiments on this little topic is including video game mechanics, or I guess themes, can be a double-edged sword. There are good things to pull from, there are bad things to pull from. I think the absolute worst thing is player expectations coming from video games. So as long as you kind of, I guess, curb that to some degree, uh, there's a lot to be pulled from, or a lot of good meat to savor the flavor of in your D&D game. Wow, that got really weighty for no reason.
Are you hungry? Are you?
Apparently.
You need something to eat?
Hmm.
It will, just like with the episode on stealing plot points. Don't tell them where you stole it from.
Hmm.
Don't sit down and say, "Hey, we're going to do that thing like the map in Dragon Age." Don't do that.
Hmm.
Just make like it was birthed in the cabbage patch of your mind, 100%.
Hmm.
Um, and if somebody happens to say, "Oh, this is like the Dragon Age map," okay,
I didn't know
interesting.
that. Yeah, that's a good observation.
So some similarities, some differences. It's not.
Anyway, I guess that will bring us to a close, sir. Hopefully, what we said was meaningful. A like and subscribe, as you mentioned, is always appreciated. And if you want to disagree with our incoherent ramblings, comment down below, and we will happily, I guess, agree or disagree with you. But without that, sir, guess we're good here.
Until next time.
Have a good one.